everyone over on YouTube? It's Fireproof Hell, and welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, we're just going to talk about one of the craziest battles that happened for one of the most popular anime right now, called Jujutsu Kaisen. And to anybody right now that's watching, if you haven't finished the manga or you're not all the way caught up on what's happening, you can probably just skip right past this video because there's definitely spoilers up ahead. Jujutsu Kaisen manga 224 happened. Basically the battle of the strongest of the past, which is Sukuna, and the strongest of the present, which is Gojo, wound up commencing. And the crazy thing about this battle is reading this weekly and the theories and the arguments amongst the community, this has probably been one of the most talked about fights in anime that I've seen in probably the last few years, because the twists, the turns, we know what Sukuna can do, we know what Gojo can do, but it's we finally get to see the result of all the shit talking basically throughout the series. After chapter 261 happened, there's a pivotal moment in the whole entire, shenanigans with Sukuna. After 261, there was a point in the whole Shinjuku battle that wound up happening that a lot of people really do not talk about, which I'm pretty surprised about. And I'm not gonna lie to you, chapter 236 is my obvious least favorite chapter because Satoru Gojo winds up dying. And of course, majority of the Gojo fans, me included, I'll admit, basically we wanted to see some power friendship or bro get a phoenix down, but Jujutsu Kaisen is one of those shows where usually if it kills a character off, unless it's really, really, really tangible and believable, 9 times out of 10 they usually do not come back, which is the one thing I can respect about the series. But it's no question that Sukuna and Gojo are literally the 2 most popular characters out the entire verse, no question. Now, I'm pretty sure y'all are wondering why I mentioned 261, even though the battle that was probably the most hyped and talked about wound up ending with Gojo's death. Well, Yuta Agotsu, which is basically Jujutsu Kaisen Zero or, previous main, he's always been hinted at to be the second Gojo, the new Gojo, and it's bro had an infinite barrier. But the thing that made it so crazy with this reveal of not only seeing Gojo on screen again, but the fact that it was Yuta Agotsu who wound up swapping brains and being inside of Gojo's body. Saw this panel, I lost it because 2 things popped up in my head first. What the hell did Kenjaku do, and how are they going to pull this off? Well, the thing about it is, Kenjaku had nothing to do with it outside of his curse technique. And the thing that I'm going to get real into perspective about is just the hype behind it. Yes, we know how the fight concluded. Yes, we know that Agotsu wasn't going to really beat Sukuna because narrative plot, otherwise Gojo probably could have won or would have won. But, it's just the fact of seeing a character like Yuta inside of someone like Gojo's body. You know what I mean? Because it's the thing that a lot of people really look over, especially during this whole Gojo and Sukuna debate, was always who's stronger, who has the edge, what would have happened if this happened, and it's Gege can only do so much. And it's funny because I feel like this chapter only happened because everybody kept making panels and theories and misleading chapter leaks, about, what's going on and stuff, and saying, oh yeah, it's confirmed. But the thing that made me the most hyped about this whole entire fight entirely was it was really a way to show the readers what would have happened if Gojo actually went against Forearm Sukuna, but mind you also being heavily nerfed, because at the end of the 235, basically, after Gojo pulls out his unlimited hollow, bro was at full health, and then it's Sukuna was on basically 25 if not 10%. And the whole time I'm oh, well, what happens after this? Are they going to jump Sukuna? Are we going to get a merger? What's going to happen? Then you cut over to 236 and, bro's just lying on the ground in half. And I'm what the hell happened? But the thing that made me so mad about that was Sukuna didn't even pop forearms yet. So it was so disrespectful, I swear. And I think a lot of fans received that because the amount of hate that Gege got all the way up until he threw this chapter out was insane. Because it was like, how am I supposed to watch this and stuff like this can go through, you know? But we're not gonna go off of basically headcanon. It's just the fact of the fans wanted to see a little bit more from all the hype. You see what I'm saying? I think that made chapter 261 so hype for me because, of course, I think we went on a 2-week or month break, 1 or 2. Is the fact that Yuta was definitely going to use the Limitless and the 6 size so much different from Gojo. Because for one, he already wasn't used to Gojo's height difference, even though they did the body swap training. The second thing is the mastery over the technique over the years. And the third thing is how crazy sorcerers are. Even though Yuta is a little bit under, I want to say, Gojo in that willingness to die potential, basically the theories that I was coming up with, I'm like, you know, bro could literally wrap his whole body in red and make his attacks hit strong. You know what I mean? Like, you know, do some things that Gojo obviously wouldn't do because, you know, he's Gojo. But also this fight entirely, in my opinion, just signifies like what Gege would have done had he let Gojo survive and Sukuna pop, you know, basically heian never for him. Because, you know, the first thing that Yuta does the minute he's in his body, and, you know, it was an obvious, is he pops domain, which is something obviously Gojo couldn't do in their battle because his brain was fried. But, you know, it's just still the simple fact of we're seeing these powers in this character through a lens that doesn't feel as on top as he would. You know what I mean? Because, yeah, we already knew that, of course, Sukuna wasn't going to lose by it because of the plot. But then also, you know, you had fans arguing back and forth. You had fans arguing with Gege. You had the people arguing about the fake leaks, you know. It was one of those things that was distracting the story so much that he's like, you know what? Y'all want Gojo? Here you go. And I will admit, it did feel super wrong seeing, you know, just the stitching on the head and, you know, Gojo, but without the, you know, confidence and expression and stuff. Yeah, Yuta did his thing, but still, you know, we know what happens when Gojo does stuff. You know, he just makes it look so effortless. And it's like, oh, how the hell did he do that? But honestly, even so, still seeing Yuta stand up for Gojo even after death and wanting it to be the monster that everybody looked at Gojo to be was so impactful. And I will admit though, now the ending of the entire conundrum, basically Yuta falling over after using Hollow Purple, like, it was expected because I'm like, if you take Gojo, Todo, and Yuji in any scenario, even if all three are weakened, that's not good. And I'm pretty sure, like, you know, Sukuna trying to tank basically Hollow Purple and then having to deal with that right after, there would have been no point. But yeah, besides the fact though, I mean, I really cannot knock Yuta at the end of the day. He actually did his thing. And a lot of people would really hate on this though, because it was only like basically a chapter and a half, not even, where we got to see Gojo's body Gojo's body get beat on. And it's like, you know, this is something that just felt so weird, but at the same time it felt so right at the same time, because the plot twist behind it, not gonna lie, gave me goosebumps, because I'm like, oh, well, that is Gojo. Wait, they actually brought this man back. And mind you, we already went through weeks after weeks after weeks after weeks. And I used to always get those comments of, man, let it go, Frozen 2. And it's like, nah, I refuse and I proceed to cope. I don't know, I just wanted to know if any of you felt the same way, because I'm not gonna lie, seeing Yuta inside Gojo's body not only was a play on Yuta being the second Gojo, but it was also a way to shut majority of us up for like maybe 2 chapters about who's stronger and who can do what. Because let's be real, like, narratively wise, both of them had an equal chance of winning altogether. It came down to a sense of morality and yeah, just values. And technically, even though Sukuna won the battle, obviously Gojo wins the war. All the students are stronger, they reach levels of jujitsu that they didn't even think they can do. They went against enemies that were world ending. It's like, you gotta at least respect it for that aspect. How the manga ended, that's a different story for a different topic for a different day. But yeah, y'all just show respect for my boy Yuta though, because after chapter 261 and 262, my respect for him jumped up so high it's not even funny. And yeah, this video was way, way, way dated because I could have made this when the chapters were dropping. But I had to give it some time to reread and, look a little bit more into it before I just start spewing out headcanon to y'all. But for right now, y'all take it easy. It's Fireproof Hell, and we're going to be back with another upload.